Well, welcome everyone to the Council for Exceptional Children Convention and Expo for 2021. We're excited to have you here and share with you our work about the National Urban Special Education Leadership Initiative. You know, zip code and educational opportunity, it's not happening for everybody. Excuse me. So we want to talk to you about how administrators can close the educational divide. I'm Suzanne Martin, and I'm the director of the Nuselli Project. Dr. Slanda?
Welcome to our presentation, and I am Dina Slanda. I'm the project coordinator for the Nuselli Project, and I am excited to welcome you here today to have this important discussion about how administrators can enact systems change.
Hi, and I'm Zarek Mays. I'm a graduating scholar of Nuselli, as well as an emerging school leader here in Chicago, Illinois.
So we want to talk about the objectives of our project, and what we're going to talk this morning is we're trying to get people to think about the historical touch points. There's been a lot of legislation. There's been President Johnson's 1965 War on Poverty. We need to talk to you about how we can really work and support children and families in high needs communities. So we will tell you a little bit about a very successful doctoral preparation project that has been based in the social justice model. So we have some data to share, and we want to talk about the impact of our project. So we will tell you when we're finished. Why don't you go ahead and replicate this and grow your own?
But before we get to talking about the future, one of the things that really rooted, I believe, the work that we set out to accomplish as Nuselli is America's history, America's past, particularly in different spaces. You may have heard of the war on poverty. I don't believe it's an unheard of concept. But particularly, it was our nation's attempt to begin to address issues of inequity, issues of access, issues of opportunity. The war on poverty was a war for opportunity, a war for access, and a war for equality for all. However, as you may know, these things aren't necessarily resonating in every space. And in order to continue to push this thing forward, the ESSA Act was reauthorized. And again, this was an attempt to really push what I believe was the initial attempts of the War on Poverty, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, forward. And so we can even move to the next slide. So when we talk about the Every Student Succeeds Act, we are talking about the particular legislation that was reauthorized by President Obama. But the point of it was this: it was to allow every child, every student and family, access, regardless of race, income, background, the zip code where they live. Here in Chicago, the issue of redlining is not, again, something that is unfamiliar to minority or marginalized populations. And so again, when we talk about the Every Student Succeeds Act, redlining and even those policies and mindsets impacts education. And that is what we want to begin to unwound or undo as we continue to talk about this conversation.
So changing the educational landscape really is our goal, and we've been at it since 2005. So we really have a good history, but we know we need you all that are watching and working with us today to help us make that change, because it's very important to understand that the perception, the numerous reports we have, the observations of students in urban settings, and not just urban settings, but students that are marginalized, students that are in minority settings, that they are achieving less. And we believe it's because they have less opportunity to achieve. So we'd like to look at changing the educational landscape. We'd like to change what the National Center of Educational Statistics reports on graduation rates. For African American students, 77%. For Hispanic students, 80%. For white students, 88%. We see a trajectory there, and not in a direction that seems equal or fair. And then when you look at the discrepancy for students with disabilities, the rates are even lower. So let's get this change going.
So one of the ways that we envisioned, Dr. Martin had envisioned starting back in 2002, 2003, was how do we create a cadre of diverse leaders who can really enact change across their schools, across their districts, and even across the country. Taking a top-down approach, we know that our administrators set school culture. that they create those spaces that Dr. Mays was just talking about that are so significant for enacting the change. Because we do see, even with the War of Poverty in 1965, 50 years later, we're still having the same conversation, still fighting for the same justices. So because of the role that administrators play in creating and fostering those safe, inclusive, and respectful learning environments, the idea of Nacelle was born. And Nacelle is a doctoral program at the University of Central Florida that is focused on social justice. It is focused on preparing a cadre of leaders with the skill sets and the dispositions needed to ensure that students have better outcomes than previous. So to date, Nacelle has graduated 36 urban special education administrators with their doctoral degrees that are now kind of coming back and serving as part of our national faculty. So it's really nice to see that, that full circle, right? That we prepared them, but then they're coming back and really enacting change within their schools and discussing what they've done, how they've done it, what approaches they've taken. So this program has been incredibly successful with 100% graduation rate.
The National Urban Special Education Leadership Initiative, NUSELI, is an educational doctorate program based on a social justice foundings, models, basis. It's all the things social justice. And in today's day and in today's world, we certainly need to be looking at that to have more educational opportunity for all our children. The doctorate has numerous components of support which allow the scholars in the doctoral program to maintain their positions in schools and learn and implement the change as they go through their doctoral program.
So when we look at the graduates, we've had three different grants beginning in 2006, and our latest funding was in 2015. And we are just finalizing that grant. We have 2 more scholars remaining that will be graduating this coming summer. But as you can see from this information and this data that's provided to you here, is that each grant had about 2 cohorts of scholars move through, and they were diverse. Whether diverse through gender, diverse through their backgrounds, their ethnicity, but then they were also diverse in their age and their experience. We have scholars that were entering just their first early years of being a leader in a leader position, who were ready to start enacting change throughout their districts or throughout their schools. But then we also have seasoned educators who wanted to continue the progress that they had already made, but really gain extra knowledge and skills to be able to do that.
So when you look also at the graduation rates, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Mays. I jumped the gun.
Oh, it's okay, Dr. Martin. I was just going to add, when we look at this data, what we can see is NUSELI really became a thrust for those of us who were already leaders or already had leadership inclinations or aspirations. But what I really also wanted to point out as well was, as a result of engaging with the rigor of this program and being around other school leaders who are like-minded in wanting to enact change and actually see change happen, there have been numerous promotions and presentations. We've been represented, in many spaces, in vulnerable places, but also places that are just very well respected, such as the CEC. But particularly when we talk about the 100% grad rate, that's great. You guys had, this amount of people, that's wonderful. But what does that really mean? Well, I'll tell you. What it means for me personally is, as a result of graduating from this particular program and moving to Chicago, Illinois, I believe that I've been positioned and even prepared for enacting change in a very real way, to the point where I've now been a part of initiatives around Chicago where we are going into schools, going into different settings, and educating our students and families around the issue of social emotional learning. And as you can imagine, in a pandemic, it's necessary. We need to know how to process through trauma. How do we name these different things? How do we name what's happening to ourselves? And a lot of that work is done through social emotional learning, which I'm now able to lead. And again, I give my being able to do this work, I count that to the work that was accomplished in NUSELI.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mays. Thank you, Dr. Slanda. And thank you all who have been here with us this morning or this afternoon or wherever you are, because this is a new virtual world for all of us. And let me finish by challenging you to move forward with this work. 50 years ago, we had a war on poverty. That was 1965, so it's even more than 50 years now. Here we are in 2021, we still have a war on poverty. So I ask you to please work towards changing our educational systems. Take a systems change approach, make change, provide equity and access for all children and all families. Thank you.